Mashallah. So pretty. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. We're continuing our reading of Uthman ibn Affan's life and times. It has been quite insightful, I must say, and I want to continue upon that vein. Let's begin. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Friday prayer in the coastal regions. Al-Layth ibn Sa'd states, every town and village inhabited by a group of Muslims was commanded to perform the Friday prayer. The people of Egypt commanded to perform the Friday prayer, and its coastal regions used to come together for it in the time of Umar and Uthman. At their command, among them were men from the companions. Okay, so every town and village that had some Muslims in it, they had to do Jummah prayer. Uthman's rest during the sermon. Qatada narrates that the Prophet, peace be upon him, Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman used to deliver the Friday sermon while standing all the time. However, when this became difficult for Uthman, he delivered the sermon standing and then sat down. Later, when Muawiyah was on the pulpit, he also gave the first speech standing and the second one sitting. Okay, so we have Muawiyah. So the khutbah, the religious talk. Performing the qunut before bowing. Anas said, Uthman was the first person to perform the qunut before bowing consistently. He did this so that people could catch the current unit of prayer. Interesting. So let's put qunut here. Uthman the first. The most knowledgeable about the rulings of Hajj. Muhammad ibn Sirin states, the most knowledgeable about the ritual of Hajj was Uthman ibn Affan, followed by Abdullah ibn Umar. Okay, so they lots of knowledge about Hajj. The prohibition of entering Ihram before reaching the place designated for that. When Abdullah ibn Amir conquered Khorasan, he said, this is truly a victory from Allah. As a gesture of gratefulness to Allah, I shall leave from this very place, Khorasan, as a pilgrim. He entered Ihram, the state of consecration for Umrah, in Nishapur, and left Al-Ahnaf ibn Qais in Khorasan. Having finished his Umrah, he went to Uthman, and this was the year in which he was killed, who said to him, you jeopardized your Umrah when you entered Ihram in Nishapur. Interesting. I don't know much about how you enter the state of Ihram. That's a subject that I need to study more. A woman going for Umrah and Hajj during her waiting period. It is known that a woman in her Ida waiting period after divorce is supposed to sleep in her own house. She can only travel after the waiting period because traveling entails sleeping elsewhere. That's strange. Why? Supposed to sleep in her own house? Why can't she, so you get a divorce, you got the 3-month waiting period, you can't go sleep at your mom's house? You can't, travel and go sleep in a hotel. As Hajj entails traveling, Uthman was of the opinion that a woman in her waiting period is not obliged to perform the Hajj. He used to turn back such women who were traveling for Hajj or Umrah from Al-Jufa and Hulayfa. So they would come to do Hajj, and then they would be turned back because they're in their waiting period of divorce. Ida. to sleep in your own house. Forbidding Hajj at Tamattu. Uthman forbade people from the types of Hajj known as Tamattu, Umrah followed by Hajj or Qiran, Umrah and Hajj simultaneously. It was not his intention to nullify at Tamattu. He simply wanted people to avail the best possible option. Uthman, along with everyone else, knew that a pilgrim who wishes to enter the state of Ihram has the choice to intend either Ifrad, performing Umrah before Hajj, Qiran, or Tamattu. He, however, deemed Ifrad to be the best of the three. Marwan ibn al-Hakam said, I saw Uthman and Ali when Uthman forbade people from performing Umrah first and performing Umrah and Hajj simultaneously. When Ali saw this, he intended them both, saying, Here I am for Umrah and Hajj. Thereafter he said, I will not leave the way of the Prophet, peace be upon him, for the words of anyone. So Ali forbade people from performing Umrah first, and then or trying to do it at the same time. Uthman did not rebuke Ali for this, as the latter was only afraid that the people would understand Uthman's prohibition to mean that he had rendered Qiran and Tamattu void and unlawful. Ali said, I will not leave the way of the Prophet, peace be upon him, for the words of anyone, so that people would understand that what he had done was indeed permissible and well-established tradition of the Prophet, peace be upon him. The truth is that both of them practiced their expert interpretation and thus deserve to be rewarded. Okay, so you had two differences here. So Ali versus Uthman. We learn from this narration that scholars can differ from debate with the rulers, with the intention of spreading knowledge and instructing the Muslims. We also derive from it that rulers should allow scholars to follow their own expert interpretation on debatable issues. A ruler cannot force a scholar to follow his or her opinion, and vice versa. We also learn that knowledge comes before words and deeds. Interesting. So, the ruler versus the scholar. Ruler versus the scholar. Eating game while in the state of Ihram. It is unlawful for those in a state of Ihram to eat otherwise permissible animals that they or somebody else has hunted. Abdurrahman ibn Hatib narrates that he performed Umrah with Uthman in a group of people. In Ar-Rawha, the meat of mountain quail was brought to them. Quails. I've seen those when I went to Point Reyes and went by the ocean. Stunning view. There's little quails going up and down the side. Personally, I feel like they have zero meat on them. If you're starving, you ain't got no choice, but quail eggs are teeny tiny. I don't know what I'm saying. It's mostly feathers. Uthman said, eat. However, he did not eat himself. Amr ibn al-As asked, should we eat that which you do not eat? He replied, I am not like you. This bird was hunted for me and killed in my name. Or he said, because of me. This occurred at another time as well, as narrated by Abdullah ibn Amr ibn Rabia, who said, I saw Uthman ibn Affan in Al-Arj in the state of Ihram on a hot day. He had covered his face with a purple garment. Some meat of game was brought to him, and he told his companions, eat. They asked, will you not eat yourself? He replied, I'm not like you. This was only hunted because of me. It doesn't say though, like, was it lawful? Are you sinful for giving it? Or you just didn't want to waste it? Disapproval of marrying close relatives. Halal narrates from Ishaq ibn Abdullah ibn Abi Talha, who narrates from Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman, that they used to dislike marriages among close relatives because they could result in rancor. Okay, but is that, when you say close relative, are they talking about cousins? Interesting. Rancor, huh? Huh. This is rancor, it didn't say birth defects. Suckling. Abdul Razak narrated from Ibn Jurayj, who narrated from Ibn Shihab, who said, Uthman separated couples on the testimony of a dark-skinned woman who had suckled them. Oh, okay, so the milkmaid was like, these two were sucklings together, so their relationship isn't lawful. And then he would void the marriage, because remember we learned you cannot, there's a lot of rules around that. Ruling on termination of marriage at a wife's request. Rubayyi bint Muawid narrates, my cousin husband and I argued over some matter, and I said to him, you can have everything if you leave me. He said, I have indeed done that. By Allah, he really took every single thing, even my mattress. I went to Uthman when he was besieged, and he responded, conditions come first. Take everything, even the strings on her hair. Wait, what? My cousin husband and I argued over some matter. Okay, so this chick married her husband? I mean, this chick married her husband. I mean, she married her cousin. And she told him, you can keep everything if you divorce me. And then he's like, alright, bet. And then he literally took everything in the mattress. I mean, when I left one of my exes, I left without a bed, you know. I slept on the floor, and then someone gave me a mattress. And then my pit bull puppy chewed a hole in the mattress. But, sometimes you can't always bring the mattress, but, I mean, he was being petty, I'd argue. Come on, why do you get to take everything? Wait a minute! The guys nowadays, oh, she's taking half my wealth. Meanwhile, this guy's taking her mattress. And who's what saying, even the strings on her hair, like, that? Why be that petty? I don't know. Well, she did say, you can have everything if you leave me, but, I mean, come on. You know she didn't mean it. You gotta be careful what you say. This teaches me, like, you know what? If you do this, like, you make a statement, and then the guy's like, oh, seriously? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And then you're like, no, I didn't really mean it, so you better mean what you say. Another narration states that she said, I sought to be released from my husband for everything except the strings with which I tie my hair. Uthman allowed it. Okay, I mean, I'm gonna, because when I left one of my exes, because he was becoming an alcoholic, and I did something similar, but I left everything he ever bought me in the apartment. Every single thing. From the Xbox, everything. And then he said, no, I bought these for you, you should keep them. And I said, no, go ahead and keep it, throw it away. You know, never think that I was with you just for money or whatever, because every single thing, not that he had a bunch of money, but you can keep it all. You know. So, I have that kind of mentality as well. But it's a little different. You know, she was like, you can have it all, just so that I can be released from you. Whereas, I left everything behind, so, you know, have fun putting that in the landfill. So I can relate to the temperament, because I know there's people who nickel and dime. I remember seeing a post on social media where a guy took a chainsaw and like started sawing things in half. Like, she gets half of everything, okay, and he's like chainsawing the sofa, and you're like, wow, you know, it must have been a bitter divorce. Obligation to avoid adornment for a certain time after the death of one's husband. Avoiding adornment means refraining from beautifying oneself, or sleeping in a house other than the one in which the husband passed away, unless there is a grave necessity to do otherwise. She can go out during the day to run her errands, but cannot spend her nights outside her late husband's house. Okay, so when one becomes a widow, so you can't be looking all pretty. See, there's a way. If a husband, you're glad to lose, versus one you'll miss. So if you're beautifying yourself, if you see like some Catholic funerals, they wear all black. The women wear makeup though, even though they're crying and trying to fix their mascara, and they try to dress their best, you know. Because some people see you as not looking pretty, as in like you're not taking care of yourself, and you're going to spiral into a depression and become mentally unstable, and you're a wreck. But I do recall reading that women cannot like mutilate themselves. They cannot rip their clothes and wail really loudly and tear at their hair, like make a weird show. So that's important as well. So, but if you're happy, you're this a-hole of a husband who was like, maybe he was a cheater, or he was a gambler, he was just a tyrant to you, and you stayed just for the kids, and he finally croaks, you know, you might want to go out and have a night on the town, but, you know, guess you can't, so. Furaya bint Malik ibn Sinan, the sister of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, narrated that she went to Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, and told him that her husband had gone after some of his slaves, who then killed him at the border of Al-Qudum. She said, I asked Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, to let me go back to my family, since my husband had not left me any provisions or a house owned by him. Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, said, very well. I left, but when I was in my room, Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, called me again, or told someone to call me. He asked, what did you say again? I told him again what I had said regarding my husband. This time he said, stay in your house until the prescribed term has ended. Thus I spent my Ida there for 4 months and 10 days. I thought it was 3 months, so we see 4 months. Ida. When Uthman ibn Affan was in power, he sent for me and asked me about that. I told him what had happened. He followed it and judged accordingly. An authentic hadith recorded by At-Tirmidhi and Malik. Okay, so not left me any provisions or a house owned by him. So you ain't got no food, and what does it mean by no house? It's like she's gonna have to pay rent and get kicked out? Huh. I mean, when someone dies and you're that destitute, you know, we should go. I don't know why you couldn't go with your family for survival. For this reason, Uthman was very strict about women spending nights outside their houses during their Ida. It once happened that a pregnant woman whose husband had died was visiting her family during her Ida, and her labor pains started. People went to ask Uthman about it. He responded, even if she is in labor, carry her to her house. What the hell? Well, they don't have hospitals back then, right? So the midwife is gonna go to her? What if she wants to deliver? Doesn't she have a right to deliver her baby wherever she deems fit? Not everyone wants to have a home birth where you just got blood everywhere. But, man, you know, I don't know how society was organized back then. So, you're telling me that if the husband, you're in the waiting period, your husband dies, you're over at your auntie's house, you start to go into labor, you're telling me that you're not allowed to take her to the hospital, but that she has to go home, which means that her baby will be delivered in her house? I don't know about that. I had to have a C-section. You know how much you're gonna pay to have an ambulance pick you up? $3,000, $4,000. When you can pay the bridge to go to the hospital is $10 plus gas. You know, why should I have to give birth at home? Why I have a right to go to the hospital and give birth and get an epidural. So maybe this would be something the scholars would discuss. Because some people labor over certain times, but if you want a home birth, maybe, but today you have to go to the hospital if you want. You know, you need a birth certificate, doctor's gotta check the baby. I mean, I follow some home birth channels, and I know there's some women who are like, my pregnancy was so fine, my baby just flew out. Well, some women don't have that. Hemorrhaging. You know, you gotta talk to your healthcare provider, and you gotta see what you want to do. Okay? But, I find that to be oppressive. You know. But again, this is what, over 1,000 years ago? So they didn't have, like, hospitals nowadays. But now we have ways of having safer, more sanitary births. You know, I'm not trying to give birth in my bathtub or give birth next to my bird cage. And the landlord would literally probably kick us out if you get blood. And my neighbors, imagine my neighbors having to hear me scream. That's a very terrible inconvenience. Okay, I cannot handle the pain. I need an epidural. So, I'm going to the hospital. And nobody can keep you from going from the hospital. But it says spending nights outside their house. So, you know, you're not gonna... But I have seen, you know, women on their way to the hospital, and then the baby, as they're standing, you know, they deliver right there. So, I mean, there's people, I've watched a lot of home birth videos. They're standing in the bathroom, the husband catches the baby. I mean, but again, each woman's pregnancy is different with every child. Every child, you know. But if you started feeling contractions, you know, dilation is different for every woman. Even when they induce you, it still takes a few hours to get everything to you when you're fully dilated and crowning, you know. But when your water breaks, you should go to the hospital. That's what I did. When my water broke, that's when I'm going to the hospital because there's no amniotic fluid. I mean, your body makes more, but I'm not getting... And I kept leaking, you know, that liquid for a while. I'm not gonna get that bodily fluid all over my mattress and all over my legs and just have to keep mopping, you know, making my life hell harder. I'm gonna go to a hospital where they have people to help me and where there's a cleaning crew. Again, everyone's birth is different, you know, but we got into the vehicle, headed on down to the hospital, you know, and I was in labor for quite some time, and then the baby didn't want to descend, and I had to have an emergency C-section. They were worried about the shoulder staccato, they call that, getting stuck, because she was a 10-pound baby, you know. I think it's wise to that, each individual case, you know, but I like watching, like I said, I like watching the videos. Oh, it's very peaceful, but once I feel those contractions coming on, I'm like, no, give me the juice. You know, give me the epidural. Thank Allah that there are scientists who created the epidurals for women, because I think a lot less kids... I mean, some women, they didn't have birth control, so each time they had intimacy, they literally had to have a baby, and abortion was illegal. So just because someone had 10 kids doesn't mean they wanted 10 kids, you know. But that pain is intense, and if Allah has given us medicine to avoid it and given us good doctors to help us, then I think we have a right to go, and that we shouldn't be carried to our houses if we're in labor. You know? Very, very interesting. I'm sure that there's more to this, but it all relates to women spending nights outside their house during the waiting period. So I guess while you're on your waiting period, I mean, there's a lot of rules for you as a woman. I thought the Ida period was just to make sure you weren't pregnant. This woman is pregnant, so what's the point of the Ida period? Very strange. Do not marry unless you really want to do so. A man once came to Uthman while he was mounted on his riding animal. The man said to him, I need to ask you about something, Commander of the Faithful. Uthman replied, I am busy at the moment, but if you wish, you can ride behind me and tell me what you need. The man climbed behind him and said, A neighbor of mine divorced his wife in a state of anger and greatly regretted it afterwards. I wish to do something constructive with myself and my wealth. I want to marry her, consummate the marriage, and then divorce her so she can go back to her first husband. Uthman responded, Do not marry her unless you really want her as your wife. So he just wanted to hit it and quit it. He doesn't care about her ability to go back to the husband. I mean, he just wants to be able to sample her with a loophole. That's what it sounds like to me. Yeah, I totally just wanna, wanna just do it. I'll sleep with her. I'll take one for the team, just so her husband can take her back. I don't believe that. But I think that's a great advice, is to say, no, only marry her if you want to. Because remember in the last section, if your intention is to do such a thing, that's forbidden. Remember? We read in the past section. Let's see if I can find it without it taking forever. But if you do something like that, you're wrong. Because you are not allowed to have the intention to have divorce, a temporary marriage. We're back there, but clearly this part is relating also to the other part that we read. Divorce in a state of intoxication. Uthman was of the opinion that anything uttered by an intoxicated person should not be given any consideration. It's kind of funny. Yeah, hold on. Let's look at that both ways. So someone's like, I want to divorce you. I don't like you anymore. You're divorced. Divorce, talak, talak, talak. Right? She's like crying, you divorced me. And then he wakes up in the morning and he's like, where's my eggs and breakfast? And then she's like, you divorced me last night. He's like, what are you talking about? I don't even remember that. Just goes to show you the stupidity of alcohol, right? But other things, an intoxicated person sometimes reveals the truth. You can discover, you can fish for secrets when someone's intoxicated. You get to see a lot about of a person because they don't have a filter anymore. An intoxicated individual's contracts or their annulment, as well as confessions or statements of divorce, are not valid because the person does not know what he or she is saying and cannot be held responsible for saying things that were not intended. Uthman said, there is no divorce for the one who is drunk or crazy. I never saw nothing in you. I never saw nothing. You ain't no good. This goes for women too, because women will fly off the rails. Men will protect us from alcohol. They'll start drinking a mimosa. You ain't shit. You ain't nothing. I never wanted to be with you ever. You know what? Why don't you just take your stuff and leave? Chuck's glass at the wall. I mean, how many times? In America, you can hear couples drunk fighting all the time. It's quite sad. You go on the street. and, starting to get dusk and there's people drinking, and you'll hear someone being like, "You never loved me." Yeah, you're just like, "Oh, here we go." So we got that. So there's no divorce for the one who's drunk or crazy. Like, just ignore it. A father's gift to his son. When a father gives a present to his son, he has to call witnesses for the gift becomes the child's property, although it can remain with the father. I wonder how big of a gift we talking. Oh, let's see. Uthman ibn Affan has been reported to have said, if someone gives a present to his son whose age does not allow him to have legal ownership of gifts, and he announces it and brings witnesses for it, then the transaction is permissible even if the father takes care of it. Okay, so let's say a car, maybe? Car, land, a horse. What about a dog? Some dogs are worth money. If he does not, however, have the witnesses and does not hand it to the child, the ownership does not transfer from him to the child. Uthman said, "What is the matter with people whose fathers give a gift to their sons, and then when the son dies, they say, 'It is mine and in my possession'? Or, when the father dies, the sons say, 'This was given to me as a gift.' Gifts are only valid when the child has come to own it from the wealth of his father." So I think the more common one is when a son is like, "This is mine now," and it might not even be theirs. So the vultures do fly when, not everything is put into written writing or the will. Suspension of the foolish from business dealings. Uthman ibn Affan was of the opinion that a foolish person should be suspended from dealings. So I wonder what constitutes a foolish person. Abdullah ibn Jafar once bought some land for 60,000 dinars. When Ali ibn Abi Talib heard of this, he came to the conclusion that this land had not been worth it. Abdullah ibn Jafar had not only been deceived, but had behaved very foolishly. Ali declared his intention to take the matter to the commander of the faithful, Uthman ibn Affan, and asked him to suspend Abdullah ibn Jafar from business because of his unwise way of using money. That's embarrassing. So he got scammed. So maybe this could be an example of, if you don't know nothing about cars, you're gonna go buy a car, you need to take someone who's car savvy with you. I remember when me and my husband, he bought me a car. He wanted me to have a car, even though I don't like driving, so he drove it, really. And we bought it at a used car dealership and paid a price for it. And when I went and told my boss, his name was Fabrizio, he said, "You overpaid for this car, it's not worth that much." Then I looked in this thing called Kelly Blue Book, compared prices, and realized, oh, we overpaid. So I called the dealership and I told them my findings. They could have just hung up on me, but you know what? They did the honorable thing and refunded me. They took $1,000 off, and that was awesome. Pretty cool. But I wouldn't go buy a car alone now. I mean, I was with my husband, but the next time we bought a vehicle, we took someone with us who knows the shenanigans of car dealers, and alhamdulillah, everything worked out precisely how it needed to. So we learned a lesson from that. So if you're easily deceived in an area and you don't know, you should take someone with you. Like my husband would, if I'm able, he likes me to go with him to the doctor and has me ask questions about things. Because English is my first language, and I'm able to get down to the bottom and really, I don't want to say grill the doctor, but extract as much information as possible of the doctor, you know, and such. So, and I have a friend who, I'll be like, is this legit or is this a scam? And she'll be like, oh, I got you, this is a scam, don't even bother with it. So, it's very important for people to know their limits, but you gotta be humble, you know. So, if you behave very foolishly, you need a babysitter, you need to have some advisors. Unwise way of using money. So, money wisdom. Money wisdom. How many people get scammed by, like, take my course or invest in this stupid coin, or they get catfished? Andrew Tate used to actually catfish men. Oh, I had them, like, that viral quote, I had them selling their houses and I was taking it all. Did you feel bad about it? No. And it's like, oh, okay, so, you know, this guy was good at making fools of people and getting their money. So those men who were fooled by Andrew Tate pretending to be a woman behind a keyboard, they're foolish people, and they should be hey, you're a porn addict. You gotta have your devices taken away and your credit cards cut in half because you're an idiot. Abdullah ibn Jafar then hurried to Az-Zubair, who was a fine merchant, and told him, I performed such and such a business transaction, and now Ali wants to go to Uthman and ask him to suspend me. Az-Zubair said, then I am hereby your partner in this transaction. When Ali went to Uthman ibn Affan, he said, my nephew paid 60,000 for a land I would not buy with my sandals, so I suspended him from dealings. Az-Zubair said, I am his partner in this transaction. Upon hearing this, Uthman ibn Affan said to Ali bin Abi Talib, how could I suspend a man because of a business transaction in which Az-Zubair is his partner? This meant that he could not possibly rule that Abdullah ibn Jafar was foolish in his practice of business because of a transaction in which Az-Zubair is his partner. After all, Az-Zubair would never take part in a foolish transaction due to his business skills. So what's the truth? Did he make a mistake, Abdullah? It sounds like he made a mistake, and then Az-Zubair was like, I'll get you out of this. But it does appear that Ali ibn Abi Talib was right. It's like, hey, what the heck are you doing? That's why when you go house hunting, ooh, you know, how scary would that be? You got one of those real estate agents. They're almost as scummy. Like, you gotta watch out when you go to certain landlords, certain real estate agents. Pardon me. They're gonna nickel and dime you. Be careful. Suspension of the bankrupt from business dealings. Uthman ibn Affan held that a bankrupt person should be suspended from dealing, with his or her wealth divided among the creditors according to what was owed to each. Okay, so a bankrupt person should be suspended from dealing. Okay, how many times did Trump declare bankruptcy? Alex Jones has declared bankruptcy. So bankruptcy today is a way, it's like, there's that Michael Scott, I declare bankruptcy! I don't think that's how it works from The Office. But if you are bankrupt and you're still making deals, it's like, you owe this bank, you owe that bank, but that's all America is now. All America is everyone in debt. It's like Squid Game. Everyone's in debt and they're fighting over the piggy bank, and they'll do anything in order to get money, and crime is super high. You know, because inflation and then wages and then the cost of basic health care and housing, people are put to the brink. You know? So it's wild. But it's true, you know, you're bankrupt, you should be watching out. If any creditors found some of the very same goods that they had previously sold to the bankrupt individual, they had the right to annul the trade and take the goods before anybody else. Fascinating. I like that. But I wonder, how would that be possible today? Prohibition of hoarding. Ooh. There's a show called The Hoarders or something. It's a show about hoarders. I I have hoarders in my family, and I've told the story about my grandma's friend who passed away. Her name was Linda, and she was a hoarder. She hoarded so much that it would be like you couldn't really walk in her home. Like food, like it's even expired. The fridge is full. She had a shopping addiction. But some people think that, and I think this might be actually an interesting theory. People who live in winter climates and come from countries with winter have stockpiles of food, and that this is some sort of evolutionary psychological trait. Because the growing season is so temporary. So if you're canning, making jams, pickles, canning is a form of preserving, and so you have a well-stocked pantry. And then survivalist foods, you know, we were told, like my dearest friend's father told me, you need to make sure you have food for at least 2 weeks in case of an emergency. And some people say you should have a food supply of 1 year. And then that's why you have so many conservative Christian YouTubers and content creators having like survivalist foods. And then you'll see conservatives doing, what do they call that? MREs? I forget the military term, but it's the food that the military eats. They'll show you how to prepare it and cook it, what it tastes like, you know, so that you have a supply. And then I remember seeing in Curb Your Enthusiasm, in not this newest season, but the season beforehand, Larry, he's in this house. And one of the guys, he's having a weird, like, he's not dead, but he's having a pretend funeral. And they discovered that he was what they called a COVID hoarder. So in the closet, Larry's looking for the bathroom. He opens the wrong door. And inside, there's like Purell hand sanitizer, toilet paper, and supplies. And then people are like, start cursing at him. You're a COVID hoarder. You piece of bleep. Yeah, you're this, and everyone's getting mad. And then everyone starts leaving the house, you know, which is funny, you know, because you're like, what? But because, you know, toilet paper and basic things were running out because people were swiping the shelves, you know. Now you go, it's like nothing, you know. But I recall how the frenzy was. And if one person hoards something of a supply and then they try to sell it on the black market to people, you know, like if everyone needs that, so rationing starts. People will start rationing, like you can only buy 1 milk per visit at a time. You can't buy 5 milks, wipe out the shelves because the supply chain has fractured. So you have a limited amount of what you can buy of a certain commodity in order to allow others to have it. So there are different types of hoarding, you know. There's responsible storage supplies in your pantry. And then there's, like I said with my grandma's friend Linda, excessive hoarding, which you're never going to use. And it's literally just rotting and you have a shopping addiction. And, you know, it's fascinating. Uthman ibn Affan used to forbid hoarding commodities. And it seems he was just like Umar ibn al-Khattab in this. He did not see any difference between hoarding food and hoarding other things. Okay, so, like, because, like, some comedians have made a joke about this as well, where people in the tropical zone, yeah, pineapples are growing, yeah, buddy, yeah, eat whatever you want, and that they have a relaxed sense of their, like, the way they are, because their growing season is totally different than their climate zone. But people who are in the winter, you're like, oh, it's cold, it's cold. Like, we have to pile wood, we have to, you know, fatten up the animals during the season. And if you think about Thanksgiving, it's like a last feast. Not about, if you take away the weird pioneers and the tribes angle from it, and you just kind of look at it as a farmer event, you're eating like what has come from the harvest. So when you're going around harvesting your pumpkins, drying seeds, you get your pumpkin patches ready, you're canning pumpkin purees, it's storing it there so you can make pumpkin pie, you're grinding flour storing it. You think about that because you don't know how long that winter is going to be or how brutal it's going to be, because some places they get snowed in. Not every city has trucks that plow through the snow, so sometimes you can't travel. You're going to be snowed in to where you are. Okay? And so how you ration your food is going to be different. And you think about zombie movies, how because there was people who not exactly hoarded weapons, but there's people who stockpiled, and that was like, oh, this is like finding a treasure chest. You have supplies. So it's almost like you can see this from different angles. And then you think about Joseph, they say that him interpreting Pharaoh's dream, and how you gotta have 7 years or something of famine and 7 years of plenty. So you have to create these granaries in order to stockpile food, in order to have grains to give to the people, right? And if you think about how Joseph's brothers, because there was no food in their region, they had to travel. But because food had been stored, they were able to actually have some resources. Was that a form of hoarding? Because there's this different mindset with people who, like, they have to plan for the future. Scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset. There's something very unique about that. Like, if you live by the ocean, you're like, hey, there's going to be some fish there, inshallah, if the corporations aren't overfishing, right? You go on the beach, there's some mussels, oysters, crabs, whatever, but if you think about it as, my fig trees might be eaten next year, so let me take some of them now and make jellies, and I can sell these jellies, But again, that's your own land, your own land. But others, they buy up things on sale and then flip it. So it depends, I'm very, very curious about the fiqh of hoarding, because I have encountered a lot of hoarders. And as you know, my great-grandma is a hoarder. Her whole house is filled with junk, and my grandpa, he went and turned the water off and stuff so that, the pipes don't get bad. But she has an entire house that she doesn't use. She's like 90-something years old. She lives with my grandpa and my grandma. So it's my grandma's mom. And she has well over, I would say she's got like 50, maybe more grandchildren, probably over 100 great-grandchildren. She's a great-grandma now, so she has so many descendants who could use that house because she owns it. But it sits empty. Even though it's one house, it's almost like it is a form of hoarding. Like, because you're living in someone else's house while you have a whole house to yourself, and you don't give it to any of your descendants. It isn't in your will. And then when you die, it is going to be an absolute mayhem for whoever gets that house. It's pretty bizarre. So it's wild. But when you meet people who have hoarding problems, collectors, because remember, there's collectors and then there's hoarders. I think it's cool so people collect vintage things. However, I saw a post once where somebody had a collection of hot sauces, and it's just too many hot sauces, It's like, are you going to eat them, or are you just collecting them? Like, you're going to consume them, or what? So are you hoarding hot sauces at that point, or are you a collector? There's some people who do those weird action figures of superheroes. Like, are you hoarding? Because it says here, it's not just about food, but you can do other things. So you wonder, so that's a unique one, because you can see it from so many different angles, right? Wandering camels. Malik narrates that he heard Ash-Shihab say, during the time of Umar bin al-Khattab, camels in the wilderness used to roam freely and reproduce. No one would touch them. However, during his caliphate, Uthman ordered that they be announced as lost property, after which they were sold. If the owners of any camels came to reclaim their property thereafter, they were given their value in money. The reason behind this ruling seems to be their preservation, either as they are or in the form of their value in money, which are both good. Abdus Salam As-Sulaymani says, There is no doubt that with his action, Uthman aimed for the public interest. He realized that leaving the camels as they were and had been from time to time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, to the time of Umar, would jeopardize them. The once selfless conduct of the people had changed, and they were now reaching for these wandering camels. Thus he deemed it best to prevent them from this, and this was undoubtedly a sound befitting conclusion. So, are you worried about them being, like stolen? So, lost property, and they were sold. And if there was anybody's camels caught up in that mix, you could reclaim it. Because the interesting thing about that is, in America, you had wild horses when the tribes were here. And how you brand your horse, is different. But very few wild horses remain. And so, you could think people would just leave them alone, but maybe some steal them and then sell them for a profit. I don't think there's any wild goats or sheep or cows anymore. I don't think that's a thing. Because a cow is an expensive, there's bison, but very few bison farms. So when you see a bison, you assume it's wild. But in this part of the world, camels are both food, used for caravans, used to go to war, and there's wild ones. So that can be kind of confusing. Maybe a similar one would be how reindeer, caribou are for some winter tribal peoples. Something like that. I do wonder. Letting the wife inherit if her husband divorced her while on his deathbed. Well, that's brutal. Your husband's about to die and he divorces you? That's not fair. You put in the work. Abdul Rahman ibn Auf divorced his wife while he was sick. Whoa, that's why. And Uthman allowed her to inherit from him after her Ida. It has been narrated that Shurayh wrote to Umar ibn al-Khattab about a man who divorced his wife 3 times while he was sick. He replied, instructing them that she should inherit from him as long as she was in her Ida. But after that there would be no inheritance for her. That seems sneaky. So, your wife sticks with you, put in the work, she didn't go to college, she's, got no backup plan, she never has a guy in the back waiting to be with her. She's, okay, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna be a widow, I'm old. And then your husband's like, I'm divorcing you right before I die, and if you don't, and if I die and you're not in the waiting period, you get nothing, honey. And you're just gonna be an old widow discarded. It's like, that's not fair. That seems like a way where a guy could just totally be a cunt right before he dies. And if you're like, I'll divorce, like, why? Why divorce while you're sick? If you're gonna die, your wife's gonna be a widow, she can remarry. So you can't say like, oh, I wanted to divorce you, because I wanted you to be able to remarry faster. It's like, what? Or is it because you can't take your wealth with you? Why do you hate her so much that you don't want her to have any inheritance? That seems weird to me. You gotta be careful, man. You gotta be so careful who you marry. Imagine you're with a guy and all of a sudden he gets sick and he's like, I divorce you, you don't get nothing. It's like, and then complain why women want to have a backup plan. Umar and Uthman agreed that a couple's divorce on the husband's deathbed does not mean that their relationship has ended in a way that renders her ineligible to inherit. However, Umar fixed a term within which the wife could inherit, while Uthman did not. He ruled that she would inherit whether it was during the waiting period or after it. I mean, that's not fair. Right as you're about to exit this world, you're like, you get nothing, honey. It's like, wow. Talk about betrayal. This ruling does not have a legal text to support it, and as such, it is subject to expert interpretation. However, It can be reasoned that it prevents some husbands from divorcing their wives on their deathbeds in an attempt to prevent them from inheriting from them. Okay, so we see some hope here, right? Because I know a lot of women who just, they stick it out with the man for the children. They don't have no career. They ain't got no money. They gave up everything for the children and to be a housewife. And to think that that guy, if he's got a bad personality, bad moral code, he can just tell you, you can just, on my deathbed, I divorce you, and then you get literally nothing, and now you're like, I'm too old to remarry. I'm too old really to get a job. I got no life skills. And now you're going to deny me an inheritance? That's pretty messed up, I must say. Inheritance when a man dies while his wife is in her waiting period. Uthman ibn Affan ruled, if one of the two spouses dies before the third menses of the divorce, see, third menses, which is 3 months. But in the last section, we just saw someone had an Ida of 4 months. So I was right, like 3 months, right? The other spouse inherits from the deceased one. Hold on. So one of the two. So if a woman dies, her husband's gonna inherit. It should be noted that a lengthy Ida does not prevent a divorcee from inheritance. This refers to the one who menstruates once or twice and then her period stops for a long time. Yeah, because if you got like a spotty cycle, I can see how that would create problems. For example, Habban ibn Munikd divorced his wife while he was healthy, and she was suckling his daughter. As a result of which she did not menstruate for 17 months. Oh wow! Whoa, nice. She didn't have her period for 17 months. Snap! I got mine back after the 6th month of nursing. Some women, unfortunately, get theirs like 3 months because it's uncomfortable. You got your period, you're breastfeeding. It's like you feel touched out. It's so nice if you nurse and your period is not there. It's really nice. 17 months. Why would he divorce her when she's still got a little chinny tot? See, that's what's scary. A guy will divorce you while you're breastfeeding his child. That's like, they don't have formula back then. There's women who travel around and become milk nurses. But what is she supposed to do? What kind of guy can't wait to divorce a woman till the child is older and, is more capable of being babysat in a safe way? That's like a woman's nightmare, I would argue, to have a man divorce you while you're breastfeeding, because you're super vulnerable. Super vulnerable. You ain't got no money, you can't work because you're breastfeeding, and your guy just divorces you. But remember, as we learned in the Quran, a man can maintain your provisions for you while you are breastfeeding to the 2-year mark, right? But again, let's say, take this example, you're breastfeeding, the apartment, you guys are living together, apartment is $2,000 a month, plus food and heating and gas in the car, all that. You walked away from your jobs and all that, your career, school, so you could be stay-at-home mom. And then he just like, I'm going to divorce you. And you're like breastfeeding. You're like, what the hell am I going to do? It's like, what's wrong with you? Damn, man, this section has been kind of sad for women. It's kind of scary. 7 or 8 months after the divorce, Habban became sick. He was told, your wife shall inherit from you. He said, carry me to Uthman. They carried him and he explained his situation. Ali ibn Abi Talib and Zayd ibn Thabit were present with him. He asked them, what do you think? They replied, we say that she will inherit from him if he dies, and he will inherit from her if she dies. Okay, so yeah, men can inherit from women. That's fair. She is not a woman past her childbearing age who no longer menstruates. nor is she a virgin who has not yet menstruated. Her iddah lasts as long as her menses last, whether they are short or long. Haban returned home and took his daughter. Not suckling any more, his wife menstruated twice, and then, before her third period, Haban died. She now began the iddah of a widow and inherited from her husband, Haban ibn Muknid, after it ended. Well, I'm glad she inherited. Guess that's why you need a welfare system. You gotta have a social safety net for women. Because of it, that's terrible. I really hope that people can get over their differences while the little children are small. It's heartbreaking when you see people get divorced and the babies in diapers. It's like, what's wrong with you? Can't you guys, what is so bad that you can't work on it? What is so bad? I mean, come on. Come on. That's why women work now. That's why these women are voting for universal daycare and all these child care provisions, because a man can just uproot your entire life. See, they say to women, don't get your education, don't work, but then, hey, your husband's going to find a way to make sure that you can't inherit, and while your child is breastfeeding, he's going to divorce you. Wow. So may Allah protect us. May Allah make men have mercy on women while the tiny tots are small. Scary. So you gotta be careful who you marry. You gotta be careful who you marry. You just have to. You know, you need to think, is this person the type of person who, when I get pregnant, are they gonna abandon me? You know, that's why abortion is so high. Because these men, they don't actually appreciate to have a child. They don't actually respect that the woman risks her life in order to give birth. So many women used to die on childbirth. So many women get infections from C-sections and complications, and everything gets on hold. Women lose a lot when they have to go through pregnancy and childbirth and then rearing that child. They get years of their life, the stress. And then the man, he can't handle, a few arguments? She gained weight? What is it that's so bad that you can't? And you can have multiple wives. So why divorce her? If you're not happy with her, keep her with your provision. Get a second, third, fourth wife. Okay? You don't need to divorce her and send her out into the world where she's not going to be able to provide for herself. You know, how scary. Hopefully she had a family. You know, if you don't have a family and your man pulls a move like that, again, that's why we gotta have a social safety net, because that's scary. You know, may Allah protect us. It's important for us sisters to study the Deen, because you learn about these things, you're gonna be like, okay, you gotta plan your life accordingly. Don't be getting cray and just having a no strings marriage and, you know, setting yourself up for failure when there's men who will literally divorce you in the worst moments of your life. Breastfeed, like, the anxiety of being single and the pain of losing a marriage and then trying to keep your milk supply up and stay happy, and you're sleep deprived, your nipples are sore, your back hurts, all that pain, and then the guy's like, I'm really selfish and I'm gonna divorce you. So, you know, so bizarre. So bizarre. This is why we need marriage counselors. We gotta work things out, people. That's why you just gotta be so careful. It's scary, man. It's scary for women. You lose your body, you lose everything. A man can just walk away from you and the baby and get a new chick. And you're there with the little one, and you're divorced with a child, you're a single mom, and the men don't want to marry you. And it's like, what now? What's she gonna do? You know, if you don't have, and so many women don't have good dads. They don't have uncles, they have literally no one, so you literally need the government there to supply you. Charities, we definitely need more charities for women. But yet, women do divorces more than men, right? So, there's that. Yet, just because the one who initiates the divorce doesn't mean they were the cause of the divorce. So, there's nuance there as well. SubhanAllah, this was a very thought-provoking section, and it's kind of scary, to be honest. Just kind of shows you how you don't know what lot you're going to be given in life. Just scary. SubhanAllah. If you'd like to support my work, you can do so by going to www.subscribestar.com/MilhanArchive. And if you'd like to read more about what I write, you can go there as well. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I'd be very curious to see what you have to say, if you have any other knowledge to drop and whatnot. It's a wonderful windy day, and I'm enjoying it very much. So I'm gonna go cook now, because I'm hungry. So take care.